Hi, everybody. My name's David Bentz. I'm an instructional designer here at Metropolitan Community College. This is our Teaching and Learning Technology Roundtable. So it's our third year running this. It's kind of an open forum where we cover lots of different topics. It's sponsored by myself and Jessica Delmonico, who's another one of our instructional designers, and then Naomi Marduk, who works with our Institute for Faculty Excellence. So it's kind of a partnership between those two entities. Like I said, it's generally pretty broad-based. We cover technology and other teaching related and learning related topics. Today, since artificial intelligence has such a large impact on everything that we're all talking and reading about in higher education, we thought what we would do is sort of look and see what others are doing in the Omaha and Eastern Nebraska region. And so I guess without further ado, I'll introduce you to Cassie Mallette, Cassie, help me a little bit. You're spearheading sort of the AI initiative in the classroom. She's going to talk all about what's going on at UNO. The nice thing is for us, a lot of our students matriculate or go on to go to UNO. So this gives us kind of a handle and some insight, hopefully, into the world of where our students are going and how AI is impacting UNO. So Cassie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Cassie Mallette. I am the program manager of the AI Learning Lab at UNO. So I'm really in charge of spearheading all of our AI initiatives on campus that I'll kind of talk to you all about today of what we're doing. My plan is to kind of just talk about our journey a little bit, allow you to ask questions. I know everyone's kind of new in this world of AI. What do I do? How do I talk to my students? I'm interested in incorporating it. I don't want to incorporate it. How do I approach teaching? Because I feel like my students are going to use it in all the wrong ways, right? So not only am I the program manager, I'm also a senior instructional designer. And I also teach sociology. So I teach it's now going to be a 6-week introduction to sociology course at UNO every semester. I've been at UNO for about 3 years now. I do not have a background in anything AI related, but was kind of tasked with taking on this new technology and how we could use it at our university. So I'm super excited. I have about 6 years of experience teaching full-time at Iowa Western Community College. And so well-versed in teaching and also now AI. So I'm excited to share with you what we are doing at the university and kind of see where you all are at. I'm going to share my screen. I decided to create a PowerPoint for this presentation to kind of just help guide us. And I actually created it using Gamma. So Gamma is actually a generative AI tool that you can use to create a PowerPoint. It is created in like a web browser, and then you can download it as a PowerPoint. And so you'll see throughout this, there are some AI generated images, and you'll be able to tell because they're not very good. Some of the words will be all morphed together and whatnot, but I've then personalized it and made it my own to better fit what we're doing here. So if you have questions along the way, I want to make sure I answer them. So please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on them to help answer any questions you have, or please feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, and we can kind of have a discussion. So today I'm really going to talk about AI at UNO and then some effective practices that we've been sharing with our faculty. I'll also give you some resources to kind of help guide you that we share with our faculty that hopefully you can then use as well in your AI adventure if you're into incorporating AI at all. Lost my mouse for a minute. So first I'll talk about our journey at UNO, some effective practices and approaches, like I said, and then leave some time for conversation and questions. But as I said, feel free to ask at any point. So where we started, right when it launched was November of 2021, that that January came around, we're like, okay, we should probably have a panel discussion for all of the faculty and staff at UNO on what it is, some challenges, some opportunities on it. And we really were in an exploring phase. I was tasked with just seeing what it was, what it could do. But of course, people were freaking out, right? You probably had the same thing in your own experiences where faculty were like, oh my God, I can't do anything anymore. My students are just going to use us to write papers and cheat. And in full disclosure, right, there are still people who feel this way that aren't quite sure what to do. There are still people who are really concerned about AI in the classroom or whatnot. But our thought process was just a basic level. What approach will we take? So in January of 2022, we were not in, 2023, I think. I think I'm off a year. We did not want to ban AI. We know some people took that really firm stance right away. We knew that it could be beneficial in a tool, and we were finding some ways that it could be helpful, but we knew not everyone was there yet. So we were not going to ban it, but we were going to slowly learn more about it and learn how we could help faculty understand how it could be beneficial for them. So we had a slow progression. We started out, like I said, embracing AI ethically. In that fall semester, I held 3 workshops that were heavily attended by 70+ faculty, and they were on effective uses in the classroom. So how you could incorporate it if you wanted to, assessments, how you could evaluate your assessments, including some AI resistant and also some AI inclusive approaches to the classroom, and then how you could use AI to work more efficiently. How many of you, raise your hand, have you incorporated AI in any capacity, like have used it, explored with it? Some people, some not so much. If you haven't, I recommend just trying it out and seeing how it can benefit you in anything, even simple things as brainstorming. So I plan all of our workshops at UNO for faculty, and I use it to come up with the titles and to help me come up with the descriptions. And it saves me a ton of time. Before it would take me like months to do. And instead, once I had my topics figured out, I could do it in the span of a couple hours to a couple days, depending on what it was. So our approach is really, everyone's going to use it in a different way because we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And so we were figuring out how we could help people with that. We also held some workshops for staff so they could see how it could be beneficial for them in their role as well. We also then focused on collaborating with people across campus and completing some professional development. So I took a micro-credential on ChatGPT through EDUCAUSE, and I also attended the University of Central Florida's Teaching and Learning with AI conference. I've been to 2 of them now. They've been super great. I learned a lot that first year. I figured out, okay, we're pretty behind a lot of places, but we're not at the very bottom. So I could take that knowledge I learned and brought it back to the university of here's what people are doing. Here's some other things we could think about doing. And there were a couple other people from our campus that went as well. And so we came together and created another panel discussion on detection tools, syllabus statements, and more to try and guide faculty in that way. I also attended as many webinars as I could because everyone was hosting free webinars at that point. And then we started to think about what is our wide scale approach? What kind of resources can we provide our faculty? What kind of support can we provide our campus to help guide them? Because generative AI isn't going anywhere, right? And in fact, it's becoming more easily available. There's like 1 million tools available that people can use. If it's not going anywhere and people are probably going to use it anyways, what can we do to make sure people are using it ethically and responsibly? And that kind of leads us to where we are now. In June of this year, 2024, we launched our AI Learning Lab, and I will put our link in the chat for you so you have that. Our AI Learning Lab is our wide-scale campus support unit, and it provides a lot of support in a lot of different avenues. I'll talk about this later. We have our OpenAI Challenge where we partnered with OpenAI, kind of like ASU did earlier this year or later last year. We are working towards preparing students for the workforce. So as a metropolitan university, and one of our core pillars is preparing everyone for the workforce, that's kind of the route we're going. We want to help prepare our students for the workforce, and AI skills are becoming more in demand from employers every single day. So full disclosure, I am the only one that's doing anything AI related in regards of the AI Learning Lab at this point. And it's a lot of work, right? To help everyone and train people on how to implement AI effectively and how to prepare students for the workforce. So we're trying to come up with a more practical approach through training faculty and staff who can then incorporate it into classes and help students learn those skills. So that's kind of the route we're working towards, so that our students are more marketable when they leave our university. We also are exploring how AI can benefit us in work and operations to make them more efficient, research, and in the classroom. So I'll talk about our OpenAI challenge, and we have people exploring in all of these different areas in the classroom with their students, in research and creative activity, and then also, for instance, like advisors, human resources, those type of groups on campus are learning how they can use this to benefit them in their work. And we also have ramped up support for faculty and staff in higher ed, not only internally for our own faculty and staff, but externally as well, which I'll share with you towards the end of this conversation. So that's kind of our journey to where we are now. Does anyone have any questions at all about why we chose to kind of go this route, or any of our journey from there to now?
I was going to say, maybe you can talk a little bit about you mentioned in a private conversation with me, your president has really sort of embraced this. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that political culture too.
Yes. So that kind of goes into our OpenAI challenge. So our OpenAI challenge is where we partnered with OpenAI to provide up to 1,000 licenses of ChatGPT Enterprise to faculty and staff at UNO. So in our first round, we had 66 proposals for people to who wanted to do the OpenAI challenge. And like I said, it ranged from teaching and learning to research to operational efficiency. And this is really our chancellor's initiative. She is very business minded. She is all about integrating AI and preparing our students for the workforce. So she saw that ASU did this and she's like, I want to be the second school that does that. And we're like, okay, we'll see. Hopefully, maybe. I don't know if it's really possible, right? But luckily, she was able to find funding to provide up to 1,000 licenses to explore. And we're kind of viewing this as a pilot, right? To see if it is beneficial on campus for our faculty, staff, and students. And so we're really excited. We're really excited that she's on board. She is super, and we have an internal professional development training. She enrolled in it and has been taking it, which is really exciting. So she's kind of learning alongside us. Having that culture where people are embracing it and not necessarily against it has been really helpful in kind of pushing our initiatives. But it's also important to know that not everyone's ready for that. And as a school, we're allowing people to feel comfortable at their own time period. So providing support for those who want it, but not necessarily forcing everyone to use it when they're not necessarily ready to. So I already mentioned these three, but these were the three areas that people could provide proposals for. How is the license of ChatGPT Enterprise different from using ChatGPT? Really great question. So ChatGPT Enterprise is basically the paid version of ChatGPT with added safeguards for training. So it does not train on your data. And because it's only in our instance, we're able to put more information in there than we would be able to into the free tool. So people who participate in the OpenAI challenge, we created a generative AI cybersecurity awareness training for them. And we kind of have 3 buckets of tools. We have free tools, so like the free version of ChatGPT. We have paid non-enterprise tools, which are if someone is paying for ChatGPT themselves or another tool by themselves. And then we have ChatGPT Enterprise, which is behind our safeguards. You have to log in via SSO, and only people who have been added to the system have access to it. But it doesn't train, and then you can put in more data into there to really see how it can benefit us. So like this first round, we're very conservative in the data and information we are allowing in there, but we're hoping that once we have like a compliance API set up to where we can make sure no one's sharing anything outside of the system, that more information that we would consider medium risk data, like some FERPA information, those type of things we'll be able to use to see how it can benefit us. Because I think that's where the real benefit can come from, of normal things we do that take a long time. Can it help us speed up the process? But good question. Okay. Here are some examples of some proposals who were accepted and what people are doing. So our public safety department is hoping to use it for crime analysis and predictive mapping. So hopefully they can see, okay, on Fridays in between 5 and 9, we seem to have more activity going on and we may need to ramp up the amount of people. So kind of predicting or anticipating needs at certain times of the year, certain times of the day, certain days of the week, those type of things. I'm working in a Spanish course where they do a service learning project where they go and translate or interpret for parent-teacher conferences. Feedback from the principal previously was that they aren't necessarily prepared for the conversations they're having, or they don't necessarily know the translation, the interpretation words they're supposed to be using. And so we created a custom GPT where students can have the ChatGPT phone or app on their phone and talk to it, having a conversation in Spanish on topics that they would have in like a K-6 parent-teacher conference. And there's another one that they'll use where it will give them a phrase in English. They need to say it in Spanish, and then they will get feedback on how they can improve their interpretation from English to Spanish, hoping that now this year when they go to do the service learning project, they'll be more prepared, and the principal and the parents and the teachers will be more satisfied with that experience. So kind of helping them prepare for something they might do in the real world. Career Services is hoping to create custom GPTs for assisting students with building resumes, preparing for interviews, exploring career paths, and navigating job searches. I meet weekly with a history professor here. She also participated for one of our AI grants, where she's incorporating AI throughout her entire capstone class throughout the writing process. So starting with brainstorming, finding sources, identifying which ones might be fake versus valid, creating a rough draft, using it as a peer reviewer, really just integrating and teaching them some AI skills as they are working through this class. And then another one that came in that we're pretty excited about is in a counseling class. I think it's a grad level class, really diving in and seeing if AI can help. So AI enhanced ethical decision making in counseling. So students can be better prepared for their world and future careers. Now, full disclosure, this is an experiment, right, to see if it can help, but that's really the purpose of this OpenAI challenge, is to explore how it can be beneficial. Since it's so new, we know some ways it can be helpful, but I always tell everyone, you are the expert in your field, so you know how it may be helpful for you or when it's not helpful at all. And so these are some of the things people are doing currently that we're kind of excited about. We also have a lot of support, and this is where some of the resources will come in that I want to share with you. We've created some help guides and information for our faculty, and I'm going to switch screens real fast. Okay, let's make sure. Okay, this is something we've created, and let me share this in the chat so you can kind of explore some of these help guides. We really are trying to guide all individuals and to help them in the class. So developing a syllabus statement. This is a page that tells people, I think of people's acceptance of AI as a stoplight, like red, absolutely no AI at all. Yellow, you want to proceed with caution. You're okay with using it in some cases, but not in others. And green, you're embracing AI. It really is all about creating a syllabus statement and a policy that works for you and how you want students to use it. And this page gives some example policies of if you're in the red zone, what that may look like. If you're in the yellow zone, what that may look like, and if you're in the green, what that looks like. So you can take this and they kind of tweak it to make it your own. And then we have some UNO faculty examples as well. In addition to this, we have evaluating assessments in the world of AI. So I, full disclosure, thought that my assessments were pretty AI resistant. I think like a lot of people do. And so I was creating this page and I said, oh, well, let me just use my assessment and see how well my AI can do it. And I was like, ah, dang it. I had like, it could do it pretty well where they would pass if they use it, right? And so I needed to make changes. And so this page really walks them through like how you could test out your assessments. And this is one of my tips for later. If you haven't yet and you have some concerns if students are maybe using AI on it, ask AI to complete your assignments. See how well it can do it. And that helps you know how you need to approach your assessments in the future. And there are both some AI resistant and AI inclusive ways that you can do this. But it shows here, like I chose to explore 4 different tools because AI tools have different strengths and weaknesses. What Gemini is good at is a little different than what ChatGPT is and so forth. And you kind of see the wide variety of things that you get, but it walks through the results, how well it did, and then what I need to do. So this graph here, I think, or image is good because it talks about, okay, would student using AI on this assignment undermine their learning or your ability to evaluate it? If the answer is no, consider incorporating it into your course, your assignments. Is I really think sometimes the best way to beat AI is to incorporate it in meaningful ways so students know how they can use it versus just banning it in general. And then if you can't use AI or you don't feel comfortable, right? Because that's another thing. Comfortability is huge. You don't want to incorporate it if you yourself aren't comfortable with it or don't know how to use it in any capacity, because then it won't be as successful. But you can consider other alternatives, right? So some of these we would consider good alternative assessment techniques in general, like providing a rationale as to why students should do this or not use AI on it. Creating authentic assessments that really measure real world skills that they may need, offering choice on assessment, quality over quantity. So sometimes people add stuff into their courses and it's just busy work, right? So students, if they see it as busy work, they're more likely to use AI on it. So thinking about the quality of your assessments, scaffolding larger assignments, relating it to their own life, which is something that ChatGPT and generative AI isn't good at. It's not good at personalization in that aspect or providing its own original thought, because all it's doing is predicting the response that you want based on its training data. So if you personalize it and have them like share their opinion, it's not as good at that. And there's some other things here. So I walk through like how I changed my initial assignment. And I always give my students an example so they kind of know, but it's good to kind of show people that aspect of it. Detection tools. This page talks through why you should not use detection tools because of the bias that they produce, especially against non-native English speakers. I go through my own example. So I used Undetectable, which is supposed to be like the best detection tool out there. But what it does, it's really interesting. It actually gives you the likelihood of it being detected across 8 different tools. But you'll see here, Writer AI came back as 0% human generated. But this was the same thing up here with Writer AI, and it came back as 73% human generated. So it's inconsistent across the different tools. And I actually used this tool multiple times, 2 different days, and it came back with different results each day. So they're just not reliable. And I personally feel like it's an emotional drain to try and prove that someone used AI when these are unreliable, and they don't really hold up in an academic integrity case most of the time because of the issues with them. The last thing with detection tools also is like Undetectable has this humanize button where a student could ask it to then humanize it and make it sound more human sounding, making it harder for detection tools to even pick it up. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg, right? Like it's kind of an impossible thing to do. But there's some resources here, how students can use trick AI detectors. So here's that difference of what it showed coming back differently each time, and then what to do instead, some approaches to if your students are using it in unethical ways. I find that if my students are using AI, it doesn't necessarily answer the question that I'm asking them to. So I can often grade them based on them not doing the assignment as they were supposed to, instead of you used AI. And I'll normally leave a note like, this kind of sounds like it's AI generated. As a reminder, please don't use that. Here's why you got the grade you did, and go into the why they got points deducted or whatnot. Another resource that you might find helpful for you in your class or at your institution, this is a AI page for students that I created to kind of help them have some idea of what it means for ethical and responsible use. So it briefly talks to them about generative AI. There's a place for faculty to put their AI course policy, so it's easy for faculty or students to see. And then there's a list of what it means to use generative AI responsibly. So students should adhere to the class policy. If there's no class policy, ask the instructor so you're not using it against the way they want you to. It should be a tool in your toolbox and an end-all be-all. Ensure you're using it ethically, not violating intellectual property rights or course policies. Do not accept it as fact. It will give you false answers. Make sure you're fact checking, evaluating citations and results. You should cite your work, and it has some examples of citing, and that they are responsible for their submission. So I always think this is good because students may be like, well, I didn't fully create it. I got it from ChatGPT or whatnot. Well, you're still responsible for that, even if the AI tool created it for you, kind of reinforcing that. And then letting them know some garbage in, garbage out of, if you put in a bad prompt, you're going to get something bad out, and it's not going to be very good. There's also some examples here of how they can use AI in their education that doesn't violate academic integrity from our perspective. So brainstorming, quizzing yourself. So giving it a list, let's say it's a vocab test, giving it a list of vocab and definitions and asking ChatGPT to quiz you so you can practice and ensure you know it before you go and take the exam. Rephrasing content. If they're not understanding something at the level it is, asking it to rephrase it at a 9th grade reading level or a 10th grade reading level or whatever they need it for. Organizing thoughts and ideas, using it as a peer reviewer. I know our writing center at UNO has really embraced generative AI in that peer reviewer aspect because of the fact that so many students work at like midnight or 11 o'clock or whenever they have time where the writing center isn't open. So if we can teach students how they can use it as a peer reviewer, they have an additional tool available to them to provide feedback. They also can use it to understand a grade if an instructor isn't available. And I like this one. I think this is helpful for everyone. You can feed it like an abstract of research or a paper if you're giving or your presentation, and have it come back with questions so you can actually prepare before the class presentation, or if you're at a conference before a conference presentation, to make sure you're kind of preparing on what type of questions you might get. So these are kind of helpful. Another resource I want to give you is our prompt book. This is something that it's available for all people. It helps guide you through getting started incorporating AI. So I said earlier, I love AI to work more efficiently. and let me go to student view so you see what you'll see. There's a bunch of different ways that you could use generative AI in your work. So for instance, I teach online all the time, and I like to give my students note sheets, but sometimes I don't have time to create note sheets for my students. I can actually take the transcript of a lecture video and say, I need to create a note sheets for my students to use and follow along with as they watch my lecture videos. Please create a note sheet over the following lecture, feed it in, and then it will actually give me an outline that I can start with and share with my students to follow along with the video, making something that's nice to have and now easy to have for my students to have additional resources. But each of these pages will have a use case, a prompt that you can copy, paste, and personalize, what you should do to get the most out of it, or sometimes it will say how you can use this in the classroom. And there's example input and output, so you kind of know what you may get and if it's what you're looking for. And so this is a great resource that we've shared with our faculty and staff so they can kind of learn how they can use it. There's working efficiently. There's some templates for assignments to get started if that's what people want. Effective uses in the classroom like case analysis, case study analysis, brainstorming, creating, evaluating citations, generating a draft, those type of things. And then of course, the student uses that I kind of talked about earlier. But this is a resource we share with all of our faculty, hoping they use it as a guide. It's great for people who are brand new to AI and don't necessarily know how to be a good prompt engineer. I shared that prompt book with you. That's a good resource we've shared with all of our faculty. We're continuing to do trainings and workshops. I did a workshop on rethinking student writing in the world of AI 2 weeks ago now, where it was all about how you could incorporate it in all aspects of writing, including brainstorming, creating a first draft and having them then improve it with your expectations or having them use it as a peer reviewer. On that AI information and help guides page, there's a link to all of our past workshops as well. So if you're interested in watching it or seeing what we talk about, those are all they're all linked there so you can watch any past workshops we've had. Like I mentioned earlier, we have some AI-powered teaching grants as well. So we are supporting faculty who want to implement it into their class. We have 3 levels. They can do an assignment, a module, or full implementation. So that history instructor I'm working with went out for a full implementation where I work with her for 3 to 4 months to incorporate it throughout her entire class. And then we also created an AI campus consortium, which includes one person from each college and important units across campus like career services, code of conduct, to really talk about our approach on campus and how we can best support faculty, staff, and students and what they want to see. So it's a guide for the whole university to make sure everyone's involved in the conversation, but it also is to help the Learning Lab understand how we can better support faculty, staff, and students on our campus. So we're really excited about that. We just had our first meeting. We are also piloting the Zoom AI Companion. If you haven't heard of that, it takes notes during your meetings. We have it enabled in certain accounts to see if it's beneficial, how accurate it is. Everyone has to go through that security training before they can access any of our AI tools, just to make sure they understand what they can and cannot talk about in Zoom when it's enabled and so forth. But we're excited to see what comes out of this campus consortium and what people are really needing. So a couple of recommendations, I've talked about some of them, but this is what we tell all of our faculty right now. One, if you don't already, have a syllabus statement for your students that lets them know clearly what they can and cannot do. No matter if you're a green, yellow, or red have that listed out. So that way they know what to expect. They know how they can and cannot use it. And I also recommend all people include a statement in each assignment. That's especially important if you'll let them use it on some assignments and not all, so they know which ones they can use it on and which ones they cannot use it on. A lot of students, people are like, they're going to use it to cheat. They're going to use it to cheat. When in reality, they want to be good students. They want to do what they're supposed to, but they're confused. Like they're scared to even use it because they don't want to get in trouble either. And then evaluate your current assessments. I know I mentioned that previously as well. And I always tell faculty, sometimes being AI inclusive on assignment is not the answer, right? AI is good in some ways, but it is not good for all things. Sometimes we just need to like beef up our current assessments or make them multimodal or have them make a video and do a presentation or something along those lines, or even just chunk them into smaller pieces. So often students cheat because they're stressed, overwhelmed, can't balance their demands, working full-time, having families and trying to go to school. Other assessment techniques can be great to reduce the idea of students cheating. Don't use detection tools, especially as like an end-all be-all for the student-used AI, like I mentioned, because they're unreliable and biased. I personally think that even one person wrongly accused of using AI is probably not great for them and for us, right? To falsely accuse someone of using it. And explore with AI tools yourself to see how it can help you. One of the things I always tell people to do, I'm going to share my screen real fast. So I've met with probably 25 departments on campus about AI and how they can use it in their space. And what I always have people do is ask ChatGPT how you can use it in your own work. So for instance, I'll say, pretend you are a sociology professor at a university. How would you use generative AI in your work? And it will give you a list of ways that you could incorporate AI into your work. You could even like make this more specific in the classroom. You could say, how could you use generative AI to improve your coursework? How could you use it to improve engagement? Anything you're looking for. Nothing knows generative AI better than generative AI. And then what I really like to do too is, let's say, I'm interested in writing support for students. I could say, please expand on writing support for students. Pretend you're talking to someone who knows nothing about generative AI. Write me a step-by-step plan on how I could use generative AI for writing support for students. And then it will give you a step-by-step plan of how you could incorporate it. So it's a great starting place if you have no idea how you could use it in your own area, of how you could start using it and exploring. And it's important, right, that not everyone will use it the same way. I had a conversation with the department this morning where they're like, well, I think it's super important that they learn how to write everything by themselves. And I have a different philosophical approach to, well, outside of academia, is writing research papers a good skill that they need to have, right? Not necessarily from my perspective, but in some cases, that's it. So I will have my students use it to brainstorm or write a rough draft and have them improve it, where that instructor wants their students to do every step by themselves and not incorporate AI. And that's totally fine, right? That everyone uses it in different ways. I want to share with you all another resource. So we have a 6-week professional development course that we launched for our faculty called the AI Advantage, Advancing Excellent. No, that's a different one. The AI Advantage, Transforming Teaching and Preparing Students to Thrive. It was originally for faculty, and then with the OpenAI Challenge, I realized that staff were left out. There's nothing for staff on generative AI out there, how they can use it to incorporate it, what that looks like. So we launched this course for faculty and staff, and we made it into a micro-credential that's now called AI for Higher Ed, Elevating Universities with AI. And it is for all faculty and staff at universities to help them learn how to use generative AI in a way that works for them in their work. So I'll go through some of the modules. Module 1 is just learning and exploring with generative AI. So like, what is it? How does it differ from other types of AI? How to be a good prompt engineer? Like, what are some of the tricks to be a good prompt engineer? When and how to use it, and then experimenting and kind of discussing what that looks like. Reframing your approach. Most instructors have a teaching philosophy, or you have a philosophy of how you approach your work in general at institutions. What does that look like? How does AI fit into that currently? So rethinking your philosophy and work approach with AI now, and even drafting a policy for your department or for your class that works for you. Then it goes into preparing students and employees to be responsible users of AI. So the importance of teaching students these skills. How are students already using it? How can we teach students, faculty, and staff to use it responsibly? So like this page, you'll see here, it goes through like using the gradual release of responsibility model to teach people how to use AI. And then it has different options of walking you through the steps for students, but also for employees. And throughout the entire course, there are these chat with AI sections where it gives you prompts that you can then interact with ChatGPT using and see how it can benefit you, how you can use AI to learn how to support students, and you're interacting with it more, so you're becoming more comfortable. This we just launched a couple of weeks ago. It goes into then objectives for AI, the backwards design model with AI, evaluating assessments, AI resistant and inclusive strategies, and then coming away with like a strategic plan to implement it into your course or department or whatnot. We launched this a couple weeks ago. Internally, though, we had 120 people sign up for our first cohort. We had about 65 people complete that first cohort. Another 75 entered the second cohort, and I just started the third cohort of 40 people on Monday. So we're excited. Our faculty and staff have really appreciated it. They've mentioned how it's been great to help them implement it. They think it's a great kind of guides you through interacting with it more and learning more. It is available, like I said, externally now. I'm going to share the link with you in case any of you are interested in sharing it with anyone. It is, hold on. There's the link to the micro-credential. For one person, they, I think, marked it at $249, but there are discounts for like 5, 10, and 100 people. So if you have people who are interested and you have more than 4 people, if you have 5 or more, reach out to me. I can make sure to get you a discount code for a cheaper rate. I think it goes to like $224, $199, and $149 per person. So yeah, does anyone have any questions for me about generative AI, incorporating it, assessments, anything along those lines?
Surely there's questions. Nobody? This is a forum. Come on, somebody ask her some nice big question.
I am curious about copyright and about how much information to put in. That kind of keeps me from exploring more because I worry about putting something in that should not go in. And I just wonder, I think at another university, one of our speakers had said they had like a service that was through their university. And so I'm wondering, if you don't have that, how safe is it really for us to be putting things in?
Good question. It really depends what it is. If it's freely available on the web and out there, I think that it's completely fine. You can also upload documents. So let's say you wanted to feed it your syllabus and ask it to give revisions or how you could improve it or something along those lines. You could feed a document in. There are limitations with the free version, of course. Anything for us in free tools, it's low risk. So anything that's on public websites, anything that's publicly available, it's like fair game to put in there. Anything that probably needs some approval, we don't allow. Are you thinking like textbooks and those type of things?
I guess just in general, I hadn't really, I mean, I wouldn't have put a textbook in there for sure, but just like I've heard people say, well, it could grade a paper, but if you put a student's paper in, that's their intellectual property. And so I guess I just feel like it's kind of feels like the Wild West.
Yes, that's a good point to bring up. So we have had people say like even creating emails, like customized emails, you can give it a template, but depending on what information you're asking from students, I'm big on transparency. Like if you're using AI in any capacity, if you want to use it to try and grade papers, being transparent about that and getting their approval. Like, hey, I want to explore how ChatGPT or generative AI can grade papers or help to give feedback. Are you okay with me feeding your assignment into it? If they say yes, then I think it's good. It's kind of like sharing previous student examples, right? It's probably best practice to ask them if you can share their example with the next couple classes. And so that's kind of the route I would go in that capacity and just be mindful of it. I'm trying to be transparent. So even in that course I shared with you, it says like in areas I had ChatGPT help me create some of it because it knows itself the best, right? Better than me. So when I ask for examples of machine learning and examples of other types of AI, it says these examples were created by generative AI, like being very straightforward and upfront with when I use it and when I don't use it. And I think that is a great way to model ethical and responsible behavior. Another thing that we talk about often is some people like, well, I want to use it, but I don't want my students to use it. And it's kind of like contradictory, right? If you're using it, you probably should be transparent with your student. If you're not wanting them to use it in any capacity, probably think about how you're using it and that you're not using it in any unethical ways where maybe they would be like, well, that's not fair. How come I can't use it if you can use it in X, Y, and Z? But again, that's also a philosophical debate on, equality among probably instructors and students, and that could be a conversation forever. So.
Other questions, comments?
I'm going to ask an uncomfortable question. How are you dealing with the traditional academe and the mindset that everything has to be a research paper? We have some of that mentality in our department, and it's been kind of interesting because we were hit blindsided by AI, we being all of us on this call, but some of us were better prepared than others. For example, some of our classes are very hands-on, and so we actually had an incident where a student tried to use ChatGPT last quarter, and they failed their final exam. It didn't help them because they needed to be able to do. But in other cases, we know actively that students are using it to write papers or to complete quizzes that haven't been updated in 10 years. So not my responsibility to do other people's work, but my question is broad picture. I'm assuming you are seeing the more conservative aspects of academia at UNO. How are you folks
Approaching it?
That's probably the best way of putting it. Yep.
So at this point, we're really trying to just meet people where they are. I mean, we hold workshops, we do all of this support, but you only get to reach the people that come to you, right? And even then, there are people who are resistant. Like one of the people this morning was against, like they think the traditional writing and learning how to write builds the skills that they need to learn the material. And it's a way to teach, right? A lot of people have been doing that for a really long time. I think it's just a matter of just opening the conversation. I always try and be empathetic. I totally understand where you're at. here are some struggles, here's some things you could potentially do, and trying to help them see some other alternatives. So maybe if their students are using ChatGPT, they're not going to be as frustrated. Or I like to even think of creating assessments where if they are using ChatGPT, they have to understand the content to do it successfully, right? So even if they are, they're still demonstrating their knowledge in some capacity, or they have to in order to use it effectively. But not everyone's there, and I think that that's okay. It's still a newer technology, and it's just like people who are more adaptive to learning in general. Some people are multimodal. They have been incorporating really hands-on assessments, more authentic assessments for years and years and years, where other people are very much in, I give 2 exams a semester or a quarter. That's what I'm doing. That's what I did. That's what my students should have to do. And you can have conversations with them, but you can't force them into it. They kind of have to see the benefit themselves, if that makes sense. Now, does anyone have any other suggestions or have been having conversations with people like that and how you're approaching it?
I just think that sometimes people are just afraid to be first movers. You know, we we experience that here a little bit, right? With the question answering section. So I think there's just an uncertainty, but certainly, you know, students are still going to be responsible for, you know, synthesizing their own learning and imparting that knowledge. So there's lots of ways that it can be done, obviously, and to me, this is a gateway into something that's unknown. So again, I think people are just kind of, a lot of people are just on the fence until I see somebody in my own discipline, you know, doing an excellent job or using it in a creative way. I may dabble in it, but I may not try it with my students. I think that's, I think there's, I think the encouragement to do it is there, but the courage is not.
And one of the things we tried to do last spring is we had people from different departments share how they're already incorporating it into their classes. So we had 3 people each month share how they were using AI. And one of the coolest ones is one of our art instructors. He does a lot of the plays and musicals. He used generative AI to create some of the like images that they used on stage for the play. And I think when you can see some of those cool things people are doing, you're more likely to kind of change or morph things. But I mean, as an instructional designer, one of my main roles for the first 2.5 years I was here was helping people develop their courses for online. It was really hard to get more traditional instructors to think, how can you put this online that does not involve just tests, as it doesn't really meet what we call regular and substantive interaction. You have to incorporate some other things or make it more engaging for students. And it's just like having those conversations and try it out, see how it works. And once they see that it works for them, or like having a different type of assessment is good, students like it, they respond positively to it, then they're more likely to incorporate it themselves over time, not necessarily right off the bat, because some people are more stuck in their ways than others. And I think that's one of the great things about academia to some degree, is you can have that level of academic freedom of how you want to teach your class and what you want to do. And it's just a matter of, in a sense, from my perspective, what you want to put up with as an instructor. If you want to potentially read a lot of things from students that you think are AI generated, and that's fine with you, you'll just give students low grades because they're not doing it well. That's what people will do. If you're like, I can't do this anymore, I need to tweak these assessments and make them either more AI resistant or AI inclusive, there's that too.
Yeah, it really kind of comes down to just, like you said, working with the tool, getting much more experienced with the tool, and meeting people where they are, right? Comfortability is internal rather than external a lot of times. Other questions?
Or even comments.
If nobody has one,
I
I'll
have
jump
one.
in. Go ahead. I'll ask one afterwards.
Okay, mine should be pretty quick. I was just curious. So I work in a particular team. We've been using AI for a while now, ever since, it's been going for a while. Did you create that prompt book yourself? You
Yeah.
did? Okay, I have to bow down to you. I mean, that isn't something we've been working to try to wrangle for ourselves. Like, how do you deal? Like, that is impressive because trying to teach out that particular piece of things, that relationship that you build with your AI is kind of a big part of that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, wow. How did you do that?
Actually, when I took the EDUCAUSE micro credential, we had to create something at the end. And I was like, what am I going to create? I'm probably that student's like, what is the purpose of this? Why am I doing this? And I was like, how can I use this to make this the most beneficial for my current job?
Yeah,
I was like,
that's the idea in you probably.
yeah, I was like, I'll make it for students or I'll make it for faculty. And so I started to develop it out. Like anytime I do a workshop, I'd add things to it. And honestly, I probably need to add 50 more things to it. I just haven't had the time to do that. And so I love the prompt book. I love the idea of it. I love being able to provide that support. I'm also working on now a prompt book for students, which will have like ethical use, responsible use, some ways they can use it that doesn't violate academic integrity, kind of that first module of the prompt book for student use, and then some other resources. Because one of the things we're hearing from faculty now is, I don't have time to put this in my class and teach students how to use it well. Right? I already have my class jam-packed with all of this content, and I'm sure it's quarters, right? Having quarters at MCC, condensed time periods, it's hard to fit everything in shorter classes, even in a whole semester's worth of class. And so my thought is, okay, how can I provide resources for students to learn? My next thought is that I want to partner with like our new student orientation to have a module all on generative AI that every student goes through. And when I went to the UCF conference it was in July this year, I was in a session, and this girl who worked at a community college, they partnered with a local university to provide a class to all students on generative AI at the community college as well. So I came back and my thought was, what's our responsibility to also help community colleges and to help smaller schools around us have their students prepared, especially when so many of them transfer in to our university. We don't want them behind because maybe they don't have the same resources or the same ability to do those things. So that's kind of where my mind's at on like our next steps of where we're going. How can we provide more support to the community? How can we partner more with local schools to make sure that everyone's doing it? Also, like the micro-credential AI for higher ed, right? Is that even applicable for K-12? How can we partner with local high schools to make sure that they're getting some basic skills in the high schools as well? So I really think it's so new. There's so much to learn, and there's not necessarily like tons out there. It's got to be like a team effort from all different angles and all different places to make sure that we're really helping our students more than anything. So.
Well, we certainly appreciate the work that you've done. It's okay for our people to reach out to you if we provide an email address
Yeah, sure.
for
Happy to answer
possible
questions.
collaboration or help or things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.